Welcome back, everyone. And today we have our very distinguished hermeneuticist, an expert on, he's been called the Einstein of biblical prophecy, and I do believe that that's an apt term. Author Peter Kling. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much, Alfred. It's always a pleasure to sit down and discuss world events. There is so much going on right now, and you have to love the time that we are living in, because this time period shall never be repeated again. We are living in a time period never to be revisited within the whole multiverse.
That is quite a statement. Wow.
It is what it is. This period of time that we live in shall never be repeated. There shall never be a time like this again. There has never been a time like this again. And this is going to decide the future of the human family. The human race is going to become extinct, and what will be left behind is the human family.
Could you parse that statement out for us? That's quite a statement.
It is. Let's look at it on a global scale. How many countries are there within the planet Earth? You look at those countries, and then how many different religions are there within those countries, and how many different political sides are taken within those organizations, and then it gets broken down where the human race is broken down in religion, or where you came from, your genes. Are you white? Are you black? Are you yellow? Are you red? And it's all segmented. We see all the races around the world, and then where the races reside, they're segmented by political or religious beliefs. And so we have come into a competition with each other, a competition where we are ready to kill each other just to show that we are more superior. And it's not just the United States against China. It's not just China against the United States. Let's take a look at it. Back in World War II, it was Germany against the rest of the European nations, focused on the Hebrews, the Jews. Interesting. We now have strong evidence to show that there was a strong connection between the Nazis and the Zionist party members at that time. I said Zionist, not Jewish. There's a difference. One is political, the other one is religious. Now,
and if you go back to World War I, guess who it was who transported Vladimir Lenin at the Finland station into Russia and who promoted the Bolsheviks? It was the City of London banking families led by the Rothschilds, and in the U.S., it was the second chapter of the Illuminati at Yale University's Skull and Bones, led by Averell Harriman. It's just too small a world.
I chuckle because I spent 20 years almost as one of Mr. Harriman's neighbors. I'm talking about Averell Harriman.
Really?
Yeah. I actually was neighbors with the West Point Military Academy. I could walk out my front door, pick up a rock, and throw it right into their property.
Well, isn't that appropriate?
On the other side of the West Point Military Proctoria is Mr. Averell Harriman's estate, or the Harriman estate.
The Harriman estate. Oh.
So he was one neighbor away.
Well, that's interesting. Just to share this with the viewers, and I'm sure that they're familiar with it. There are two key people, Skull and Bones graduates. And of course, the true history of Skull and Bones is not that it was founded in 1832 as a chapter of the Brotherhood of Death, but that it was founded in 1776 as the second chapter of the Bavarian Illuminati, founded in 1775 by a Jesuit. Adam Weishaupt. So
So
there,
now the connections are becoming put together historically, aren't they?
yeah. And it was two graduates of Skull and Bones, i.e., the second chapter of the Illuminati, who facilitated both the Bolsheviks and Adolf Hitler. On the one hand, Averell Harriman, Skull and Bones graduate, was the one who facilitated the Bolsheviks, which were the most radical element in the Russian Revolution, mainly Zionists. They were totally Zionists. They were the Zionist element. And he had them sent the plates for making counterfeit U.S. dollars and all kinds of factories. And he put them in power along with the bloodline families of the city of London that we know so well, the Rothschilds and all those lovely people, put Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik faction, in a sealed boxcar and sent him through Europe over Finland into Russia, knowing that they would then, using their secret services, take over the Russian Revolution, eliminate the Tsar, and put in communism. And it is communism that is the modus operandi of the New World Order.
Absolutely. We saw communism. I want to digress just for a second. We can go back actually 100 years prior to 1814, when during the first Congress of Vienna, when they tried to form the New World Order at that point, and the Tsar Alexander the First of Russia said, "I'm not buying into your game. I beat Napoleon. He was out of here." And I believe it was that Amschelmeyer Rothschild told him that my descendants will see your descendants wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah. and
talk about a blood feud.
No. And they did that through the Illuminati,
Yes.
through Yale, through Averell Harriman and Wall Street, and through the City of London, through Vladimir Lenin, who was just a tool of the Rothschilds and the Harrimans and the Rockefellers. And then there was next door to the Harrimans on Wall Street, there was Prescott Bush, who was a fellow Skull and Bones graduate, and his job was to funnel funds to Hitler, and starting in 1923 through a German bank, and that's how Hitler was funded and got started, and how they got around the Treaty of Versailles, and how the satanic Illuminati hooked up with their cosmic puppet, Adolf Hitler.
And then you have Operation Paperclip,
Right.
where they turned around and recovered their investment.
Yeah.
And that brings us where we are today.
Yeah.
We have probably one of the greatest PSYOP events going on the planet, that being the official death of Nelson Mandela.
Right.
Everyone can do their own homework. I'm not going to get into it. But we have the official death of Nelson Mandela. 91 diplomats around the world show up in South Africa for a 1-week memorial to Nelson Mandela. Oh, now,
No, and media is all Mandela all the time. I mean, I don't know what it is in the States, but here in Canada, CBC and BBC is all Mandela all the time.
well, I've done my best to avoid it. To be
Oh,
honest
yeah.
with you. So if I'm going to turn on the idiot box, I figured I might as well either learn something or put my mind on horizontal hold for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just avoided the whole psyops of Mandela, because it's like, yep, okay, this is all. Wait a minute, he was sick back in June, and he was on his deathbed, and then they said, well, we're going to pull the plug, and it was announced that he died. And all of a sudden he came back to life. Okay, official media story, whatever the case might be. But
Right.
now he's officially dead. You know, kind of like Osama bin Laden. We got an official death date for him,
Yeah.
too. May 1st. Interesting day. But, you know, here we have an official death day, and there's a whole week of memorial celebration in South Africa. And you have the world's dignitaries showing up. And now it's interesting. Most people have a mindset of Nelson Mandela, like he's been elevated to the point where we might say Princess Diana or Mother Teresa. You know, I've got Facebook friends that said that they remember reading something about Nelson Mandela dying in prison. And they're from South Africa. So who knows what's really going on here? But this man, who we are told passed away, happened to pass away to give enough time for a week-long celebration, which ends on the 15th. And we have a very, very interesting alignment, if you want to call it, on the 16th of this month, December.
Tell us about it.
The way to uncover this is to go look at the Voortrekker Monument, Voortrekker. If I'm a little off on the spelling, Google will correct it and find it for you. Don't worry. Go to Wikipedia and just read what it has to say, general information about the monument. What you find out is that it was fashioned by the designer was very much into Egyptology, and it was fashioned as a sun monument to the sun. And on the 16th, there's an alignment which actually lights up the altar, which is supposed to be made of what was the alchemy stone? I forgot the stone that everyone was looking for back in the Dark Ages, but this altar is supposed to be made up of it. The alchemist stone, I guess. And when the sun hits it, it lights it all up, and that's the altar. Now, interesting, you look around the base of this thing, and there are bowls on it. In Egypt, there were 76 terms for sun worship. 72 of them also were used for bull worship. And so you get drinks like Red Bull, the two bulls holding the sun in place. Now, there's also a statue outside, a bronze statue outside of this building, where a man is controlling a huge bull. If you look at the bull on Wall Street, it put me in the mind of the bull and bear bronzes that sit on Wall Street. This was a big bull that was rippling with muscle, and he was being controlled by what appeared to be a human. And this is outside. I don't know exactly where it's placed outside, but it's clearly there. Now you have to wonder, is this bull being brought into the altar for slaughtering? And so I have to question Nelson Mandela, one of the Knights of Malta, in the employ of the Vatican, essentially at that juncture. That documentation is there. You can find that. There's no doubt about that. There's even a stamp with him with the signature of the Knights of Malta right on him. And so when you start looking around at other people who are Knights of Malta, what you find is that probably one of the most indebted or high-ranking knights isn't actually a knight at all. It's a Dame of Malta, who indeed is Queen Elizabeth. She is a dame of the Knights of Malta. And so now all of the knighthood, you have to go back to, a lot of people say, oh, this was Renaissance. No, this was how it worked, and it's how it still works today. The knights are indebted to the king. That's all there is to it. So there are still four major knighthoods. The oldest one, I believe, is the Equestrian Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. And you might know the Church of the Holy Sepulchre over in Jerusalem. And this is the oldest order. I believe all the other orders are younger than what they are, but they all come about at the same time of the Crusades. The Knights Templar is also one of those same knighthoods still in order, and they're all controlled back to the Vatican, which is essentially controlled by the Jesuits from the top to the bottom. Okay. What else is controlled by them? Well, let's see. We know that according to whistleblower for the World Bank, Karen Hughes, she had said that the Jesuits have a stranglehold on China. Okay. Look at the growth of China since, who was it that went over there? Oh, that's right. Henry Kissinger, under the Nixon administration, set up the most favored nations treaty with a country that was totally alien to the United States and was our number one enemy, maybe even more dangerous than Russia because there was so many of them. And they got most favored trading nation status. I was a teenager. I remember I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Yeah, that's what they gave them. At that age, I knew that was a mistake or part of the plan. So we know what a powerhouse China has become. They've with the event of Fukushima, they've replaced Japan as the second most powerful economy in the world, next to the United States as being the most powerful economy. And we can see what is happening to the economy in the United States. The government doesn't have enough money to pay its bills, and we're indebted to the Federal Reserve to the tune of over $17 trillion. I had heard reports that there's another close to $3 trillion slated to be spent by the end of this year into January before we have to go through this whole process again. Okay. Let's take a look at what just happened with Syria. The United States was ready to go to war with Syria. Prior to that stance, Israel lobbied Congress heavily to go to war with Syria over alleged chemical weapons that were supposedly being used there. When you went and looked at what was at the footage of some of this that was being, you could clearly see that the chemical weapons were not in the hands of the Syrian military. Clear evidence that it was being used by the rebels. Now, whatever you want to believe, go ahead and believe, but here's the situation. At the World Summit, at the G20 summit, all got kind of diffused. And what you find, and you can find the news articles, Putin got a good boy, a little pat on the head from the Pope. And Obama is said to have kind of got his face slapped a bit because of their stance. Now, if you recall, Putin said, look, well, first they said, you bomb Syria, we'll bomb Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, tit for tat. And then all of a sudden, no, you know what? Let's take the chemical weapons out of Syria. A peaceful solution was sought. Now, let's take a look at the emblem for Russia. And I'm not talking about the bear. I'm talking about their state emblem, double-headed eagle.
Right.
What was the emblem for Rome? Double-headed eagle.
Mm.
Aha, look at the symbols. Look at the emblems. They don't lie. They don't lie. It's something that my mother asked me when I got ready to publish Letters to Earth. She said, are you really going to use your real name? And I said, if I didn't use my real name, why would anybody believe anything I said? If I used a pseudonym, I'm going to lie about my own name? It's interesting. We've got people who channel these alien creatures who are always anonymous. They've got really interesting names. Matter of fact, I listened to one that you did an interview with recently, Cobra.
Oh, right.
He had some very interesting things to say. Well, they have to tell the truth. They have to explain what's going to happen. Because if they don't explain what's going to happen, they break the rules of the game. So they have to go along with what is actually going on right now here on this planet. But that doesn't mean that they're trying to shift it. Let's go back to Nelson Mandela. Knights Malta, controlled by the Jesuit Vatican, and 91 dignitaries show up for a weeks-long celebration ending the eve of the 16th. Comet Ison was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. It was supposed to be a one-time deal that was supposed to put on a show in the heavens above like no other. It was going to be greater than Halley's Comet. We were supposed to be dazzled beyond belief. And it was supposed to be passing right past us on the 16th. Now, here's another interesting thing about the 16th. When you do the research, there's a lot of evidence that the, last year we all heard that the world was going to end December 21st, 2012. They even made a movie out of it. It came and went. Nothing happened. I said, way before then, I said, hey, the Mayans didn't say the world was going to end. They said it was the end of their long Baktun, and it starts another one. Well, now, in the Mayan prophecy, it says that their long Baktun would be the return of the feathered snake god. And so now if we look at this comet that is supposed to be going by, and we look at the readjusted thinking on the evidence of when the Mayan count long Baktun year ends, it ends December 16th, 2013.
Very interesting. And
yeah.
And the tail of Ison, the signature of Ison looks like a feathered snake. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's what the Mayans said.
Oh, I see. Which is even better.
I'm just quoting Mayans. These are my words. I don't need to use my words. History's got enough of them themselves. You just have to go back and look at it.
So is that why NASA pronounced Ison dead?
Did you notice when it came around the sun, a comet is the tail of a comet is supposed to point directly away from the sun because the sun's ejecta is blowing it regardless of where it's going.
Yeah.
When it came around the sun, instead of the ejecta being pointed that way, it was going back that way. What was up with that?
Right.
It wasn't pointing away from the sun. It was now a twin tail pointing to 9 and 10 o'clock levels or 9 and 11 o'clock levels. It wasn't pointing up to 12. You tell me. I only know what they taught me in science class,
Right.
And that's what it's supposed to be. It's kind of like a tropical depression coming up the East Coast, being pushed out to sea by a cold front, which typically happens October, November of the year here in the Northeast. And never before have I ever seen a tropical storm make that hard left and go right through a cold front and cause the destruction that Hurricane Sandy caused.
Right.
We see strange things all the time. You just have to look at it and realize what's going on. Even the media it said that they've never seen that before. That was a once-in-a-lifetime event.
Right.
Probably caused by horror.
Yeah. So let's look at the facts here. It appears from research that I've seen that Nelson Mandela may have died around June 2013, right? If not before.
Yeah, somewhere. So they put him on ice.
Yeah. So he's there. Then, sometime in the spring, summer of 2013, the three immediate presidents of the U.S., Bush, Clinton, and Obama, fly to Africa anomalously and have a meeting there. And everybody says, hey, they're planning the next false flag. And what they're doing is they're foreshadowing, right? In the mind control sense, They're
Yeah.
foreshadowing the psyops of the Mandela funeral, right?
Was it the wise men went to the east, or they went to where the king was born?
Yeah.
They were the three emissaries that came in. Now, why? Ask yourself why those three? Well, from what I understand, in order to be president of the United States, you also have to be a Knight of Malta.
Aha.
Ah, why does the Knights of Malta keep on coming up in this? It'll continue.
Now, by the way, you mentioned Cobra. What Cobra said, and I just want to pass it on, is that the Knights of Malta and a lot of occult circuits got together and using very dark methods opened portals in 1996 in Africa through which came powerful reptilian beings. And that's what we've been dealing with. And they were behind 2001 9/11. And that is the force behind the New World Order. And that's where the pitched battle is now. And so, and
Ah,
so now we have the Nelson Mandela false flag funeral, which ends on December 16th, 15th,
15th.
15th,
Yep.
you said. And so, what's the significance again of the 16th? That's the end of the Mayan calendar. Now, what's
Well,
supposed to
actually,
happen?
The Mayan calendar ends on the 16th.
The 16th,
It Yep. It starts. The new Baktun
the
starts on the
Nubactun.
17th.
Yeah,
Yep. Okay. So
yeah, yeah.
the long count, the 5,125 year calendar stops
Okay,
and restarts. It doesn't
okay,
end. It restarts.
okay.
And the restart was supposed to be the return of their feathered snake god, a once in a lifetime comet event. Come on, you're talking about people that were the greatest astronomers on the face of the planet. They understood what was going on. Their calendar is the equivalent of an atomic clock,
Right.
and so you would expect. Now they said that Ison has never been here before in recorded history, unless it was recorded as a feathered snake god the first time it came around, and was recorded by the Mayans possibly 5,125 years ago, which just happens to coincide with the events of the Book of Enoch, which talks about the invasion of the Watchers, who take human women as wives and create the Nephilim offspring.
Yeah.
One Baktun ago. Why do these synchronizations all of a sudden start happening at the same time the Earth is going across the Great Rift of the Milky Way? It's like, could this possibly be set in the timing of the stars? Well, where do we set our atomic clocks to? Don't we set it to the movement of the orbits of the planets and the sun and the stars?
Yeah. Yeah. So, are you saying that this is a good foreboding, or are you saying that this is a
It all
menacing
depends.
foreboding, or are you saying that it's what we make of it?
I guess it depends on which side of the coin you're on here, so to
Yeah.
speak. Now, uh, it's going to be very menacing for the royals, the governors of this planet, because they're the ones who are responsible for what's
I see.
going on. It's going to be very menacing for their military commanders. According to the prophecy, they all get killed. They become bird food. Revelation 19:17 is where you could find that. It's the great evening feast of God, where the birds of mid-heaven are called together to feed on the flesh of the kings and the mighty ones and their commanders and the military and their servants. Their free men, interestingly enough, is how it's worded. Freemason, maybe? Who knows? But it's the cabal, which is doomed.
Right. So
Now,
that
now,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it's just that your mind is working at such a speed that I just want to parse it down. Here we go, and we have the end of the Mayan calendar on the 16th, and it starts on the 17th. And so, from a hermeneutic point of view, walk us through what's happening as of the 17th, and then say from the prophecy point of view, what clocks start ticking, and what, like where does all this happening? Because what we have is the sudden gathering of the gang leaders, right? And I thought it was great that during the Mandela funeral, Mandela's house was burgled. I thought it was like classic.
Hey, you know, everybody's out of town.
Yeah,
Easy
wham.
target.
Now, so here we have let's look at the theatrics of it, or the optics of it. We have the gang leaders are all gathered there, right?
What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
What is their objective?
Yeah.
Well, when you do the research
and Putin didn't go, right? By the way, did he or did he?
You know, I didn't actually follow it. I didn't hear anything
about
him going.
You didn't,
but I honestly didn't follow it. This is all in retrospect.
I see.
I've got an objective view to this because I just went back and did the research. What's the research on the building? Yeah. You know, what's the timing of all this? And when you look at the research on the building, these people are there to invoke the rise of Amun-Ra, to invoke the rise of the pharaohs and the Egyptian gods. That's what this Vortecker monument is for. They've built it as a portal. I see. Okay. Now, interesting thing. We're gonna have to see. You know, I'll tell you. Go to Google Images or go to any image search, and look up the Vortecker monument, and then just type in lightning after it. Okay. You'll see some couple of interesting pictures that where lightning just strikes all around where this thing is placed. I thought it was interesting anyway, and just look at some of the pictures that you find when you actually do that. And like I said, it's essentially, they built it as a portal. It has an alignment. Right on the 16th is the alignment date. And they're going to try to open up something. Interestingly enough, the next prophecy out of the string of trumpet announcements. Interesting. You got to put that on the screen.
No. This is absolutely awesome. I don't know. What we'll do is we'll put that on during the so
people can see
at some point, because it's just awesome. Now, so here we are in the 17th, and what you and I had talked about was to do a program on sort of the end of the year and the beginning of the coming year, and wow, this is really playing itself out, where all we have to do is look at what's happening and kind of read it out, right?
Now let's look a little deeper. Okay, let's look a little deeper. We're going to look at this. There's a power play coming up. What we have here are the gods being invoked by those people who still worship them. And if people think, oh no, they don't, the gods are, go look at Rockefeller Center. You can pull up a picture of Rockefeller Center anywhere. There's Prometheus. Type in the gods of New York City, and what you find is that there's an obelisk to Ra. There's Mercury is on the Grand Central Station, and down in Lower Manhattan there is there's a statue to Atlas holding up the world. As a matter of fact, it's right across from one of the old churches that are there, that's in New York City. And then, of course, naturally, you have the bull and the bear. Both interesting uses of imagery, both used in the scriptures. So, and we know that the bull's connection right back to ancient Egypt, as I mentioned before, 72 out of 76 terms were used in bull worship as sun worship. So you've got all these situations that are coming together. These people, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, whomever they may be, are still invoking these ancient gods, which are actually alien powers. Now, okay, you might think the cheese is slid off my cracker. Let's go back to Daniel, the 10th chapter. And what we have is the account of Daniel wants to know the future of the nation of Israel. They're in flux here. The Syrians defeated the Babylonians, and they haven't made it back to the promised land yet, and they're still in a state of flux. So something's going on here. So he's praying and praying, praying. Finally, Gabriel, the extraterrestrial Gabriel, shows up with a message. Now, interesting, angel means messenger of God. So he shows up and I'll paraphrase it. He says, "Hey, sorry I was late, Daniel, but I was fighting the Prince of Persia, and I had to go back and get Michael, one of the foremost ones, to come and fight with the Prince of Persia so I could deliver the message." And he delivers the message to Daniel, and then he says, "Well, I got to go back and fight the Prince of Persia, and look, the Prince of Greece is coming." Now, these were extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, in a battle with each other. Oh, like that's never happened before. You have the Vimanas in Indian folklore, or Indian legend. I shouldn't. It's more than just folklore. It's there in Sanskrit documents. So you have this battle that's going on off the planet, and there's rivalry between the Prince of Syria, the Prince of it was the Medes and the Persians, the Prince of the Medes and the Persians, which actually that went up into the Syrian Empire, against the Prince of Babylon. So you had Cyrus the Great from the movie The 300. You had Cyrus going up against, essentially, it would be Alexander the Great, who would push them all the way back, all the way to the Indian, or the border of India. So when Gabriel said, "Look, the Prince of Greece is coming," that whole area was going to be pushed back. And now the Promised Land would certainly be under the auspices of the Greek Empire, which essentially quietly succumbs to the Roman Empire. That's why their gods are so interchangeable, Greek gods and Roman gods. And you have this same thing, which now has been brought into the 21st century by doing exactly what they're doing now down in South Africa. But now let's look at it from a more practical standpoint. That's the history. What's going on here? Well, if you're making a play for the world, and you've got, you ever wonder why you got the Galactic Federation or the Galactic Councils, the Council of the Palladians, you got all these extraterrestrial councils, which are all meeting, trying to figure out what to do with old little poor humans. Maybe they showed up because they are members of the gods that are being worshipped by these elite. You ever think about that? They got to come up with some backstory. Oh, we're from here, we're from there. It always amazes me whenever I talk to anybody who's a channeler. I bring up one thing, and I tell them this. I say, whatever their agenda is all well and good, but let it be known that every knee, both alien and human, will bend when the immortals show up, and they all agree, every last one of them, but they never talk about the immortals. Isn't that an interesting thing?
Now, who are the immortals?
That's a subject for a whole nother show, Alfred. But they are essentially one of the most powerful life forms in existence. You're talking about a governing class of life forms, which essentially starts off, it goes back to the days of Yeshua or Jesus. Jesus had a pre-human existence. We know that. Guess who got to deliver the message? Gabriel. He said, "Hey, Mary, guess what? You're now carrying the biological Son of God. It was implanted in you." He didn't go into details, but he said, "You are pregnant with the Son of the Lord, or with the Lord, the Son of Yahweh." Where did this happen before? Oh, well, we got to go back to Genesis, the second chapter, when God says, it's not good that the man that is alone. We need to make a helper for him. So they anesthetize him. They perform an operation. They take out a rib. They take the rib, send it to the genetic engineering lab. The genetic engineering lab turns around, adjusts the DNA, runs it through the processor. And Adam says, "At last, this is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bones. This one was taken from man. I shall call her woman. She is my clone." Well, it doesn't say about the cloning part, but there's clear evidence of genetic engineering. Now you got to change everything in the scriptures, don't you? Yeah. You starts off in Genesis with genetic engineering. Where have I heard that story before? Ah, the Anunnaki tell that to the Sumerians. We made you from the lower life forms. Except in Genesis it says, you are children of God. You came from the higher life forms. Interesting. Are both stories true? You go to Genesis, the third chapter, the 15th verse, and this is after the forbidden fruit is eaten. And there's some theories that we could go on that. We are in the beta system here, mentally anyway. But here's the prophecy. And this is Yahweh speaking to the serpent. And he says, I shall put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed, your genetic offspring, and the woman's seed, the woman's genetic offspring, who later on proves to be Yeshua through the line of Abraham. So, and it goes on and says, and you will bruise him in the heel, but he will bruise you in the head. A death blow. You ever hurt your heel? Oh, it hurts days. You can't walk on it. But you know what? Not too many people walk around once they've been clobbered in the head with a mighty weapon. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at one of the oldest prophecies. Now you've got two different seeds, two different genetic strains, which are, over the years, have intermingled with each other, except, why do the royals keep a breeding program going? Why are they all interbred? Why are they willing to kill each other in cold blood and blame it on some accident? Cold-blooded reptilian killers. Let's see. Does that fit? Yeah, it fits. It fits. So let's look at the world situation. The Pope in May came out and he condemned the current banking system, the debt system, as we know. He came out again in September, condemned it again. He said, you cannot say in God we trust on your money, because you've made money your God and you've made it a method of enslaving people. This is unacceptable. It cannot go on. In October 3rd, the Pope issued a 41-page treatise, which goes part of it, which goes back to Pope Pius the 9th, was it? Oh, back to 1963 anyway, Pope Pius, whomever. And it's all intermingled. And interestingly enough, Alfred, they're looking for loopholes. You know, when you mentioned that you wanted to go run for Secretary General of the United Nations, I thought you lost your mind. And then you explained it to me, and I thought, what genius, what absolute genius. You found the loophole. Yeah. Well, guess what, Alfred? If you found the loophole, do you think they could find it too? It's there. There's two loopholes. Right. One in the book of Joshua, the other one in the Christian Greek scriptures. I forget where it escapes me where it is right now, but they're both there. Yeah. They're both there where you can sue for peace. Yeah. So now which one of their gods do they want to put in power to sue for peace on behalf of planet Earth? Hey, the Pope's already said, hey, oh, and I shouldn't say the Pope. The Vatican would love to baptize aliens and make them all Christians. Sun worshipers, not followers of Christ. There is a difference. See, we have to go back to what happened, and we're going to get into this a little deeper, but when Jesus died, or the man that we know as Jesus or Yeshua died, he made a blood claim to this planet. Mm-hmm. Jesus never said, he never said I came to start a new religion. He said, I came to fulfill the law, the Hebrew law, the law of Moses. Mm-hmm. And what did he tell Pilate? My kingdom is not from this world. King of kings, Lord of lords, ruler of the multiverse. Yeah, well, we'll get more of that in Revelation. But let's go back to the banking system. The Pope orders this treatise. And interestingly enough, sometime during the summer, I forget when it was, he comes out and with an apostolic letter which says we are going to carry out papal law, Vatican law, to the letter to those who don't comply.
Hmm.
And I think I sent you a copy of this. And, you know, it was written in Vaticanese, I guess you would call it, or Pope language. I'm not
Right.
a legal expert, but I got the gist of what they were saying. Um, Now, from a religious standpoint, you may laugh. From a corporation standpoint, you better take it seriously because they're the mother of all corporations. They control the knights. The knights control the countries. They're in control. Now, they want to change the banking system. Okay, China, who the Jesuits have a stranglehold on, decides to put together a little banking organization for free trade in the world called BRICS. Brazil, Russia, uh, India, China, and South Africa. How about that? There's actually over 30 members of this country. They've come out with their own currency. They don't need the almighty petrodollar anymore. The Federal Reserve note is kaput. Okay? You want to keep your country going? Sign on to BRICS. Sign the BRICS Treaty. Free trade. No taxes on the imports. We got money that's backed by gold. It's worth something. So the Jesuits are behind BRICS? It would appear to be so. Now, who's behind the other part of the banking system? The Oppenheimers, the Bushes, the Rothschilds, their cabal. You see, now you've got the Zionists. And so you have the Zionists and the Jesuits who once upon a time, rode the same horse to the Middle East and secured the Temple of Jerusalem as their own and rescued all that sacred knowledge which was buried there 100 years prior by Egyptian Molech worshippers, according to the disciple Stephen. So back here we are to Egypt again. And so we've come full circle, Alfred. We started this conversation off with Nelson Mandela and the Vortrekker monument, which was to raise the Egyptian gods, and the people who are in power are bloodline Egyptians from the days of the pharaohs who have kept their lines pure, who have interbred, who have stayed and can track their family lines all the way back and make claim. And so you get organizations like the Illuminati, the Freemasons. Look at Freemasons. Where do they track it back? Not just to Egypt, but the honest ones will track it back to Samaria. Right back to the beginning. Syriamis, the goddess of the Freemasons. Who built the Tower of Babel? Wasn't stonecutters. Was masons, bricklayers. Interesting how this all works out. And so now we are set for the Vatican through using a component like BRICS to start to bring down the Federal Reserve note and crash it. And then they'll crash the world currency. Now, we're going to have upheaval. Okay? Expect this to happen next year, 2014. Financial upheaval. It could happen right away. It might happen by the second quarter. But expect it to happen. The dollar, I'm surprised the dollar's lasted this long. I bless every day that we can go one day longer and prepare for what is coming. And that's why I always suggest have extra food, have extra water, be prepared for living a little bit lean for the next when this happens for the next few months after that. But you see, here's the problem. Amidst all this chaos, something has to happen. We have to restore the chaos. And how do we restore the chaos? If the Vatican caused the problem, maybe the Vatican's got the answer. You see, the Pope is calling for a total worldwide restructuring of the financial order. Now, when OTTP came out, the One People's Program Trust, I forget exactly how it stands.
Yeah.
But anyway, they said that there's enough money to give everybody like $10 million or some ungodly amount. There's enough gold on the earth to do that with. And when we look at our bank accounts today, In America, we look at the dollar bills. In Canada, you look at the pictures of the Queen go flashing by. We look at dead presidents, and depending on what country you're on, it's some tie into a paper currency, which we have a handful. And we look at a bank account, and if you're fortunate enough, there's at least a one and a whole bunch of zeros behind it. But if I hit the delete button, all those zeros go away, and what you have is what you're holding in your hand. Interesting. There's a currency called Bitcoin. It's an electronic currency. In the few months that I've watched it, about 8 months, it's gone from about $86 up to over $1,200, and now has retraced back down to $800. Had I bought it at $80, I would have made a nice substantial profit. From what I understand, JP Morgan Chase is coming out with something similar to Bitcoin, an electronic trading fund. If you wanted to reshape the world for the 21st century, would you use a paper currency? No, but you could use something that could be backed by some kind of value. You can come out with an electronic currency. And you know what they could do, Alfred? They could turn around, they could take debit cards, and they could load them up with 100,000 Bitcoins and hand them to every person in the world. Now, if you're a family in Bangladesh and you just got 100,000 Bitcoins on a plastic piece of card that is good for whatever you want to purchase, woohoo! Chances are you're a millionaire. Between you, your wife, your kids, everybody gets one. And now the world is happy. Everybody's got money to spend. Everybody starts going back to work because people want to buy stuff. And so you got to make stuff. And so now you have a controlled worldwide currency by the Jesuits, and it's electronic. It fits Big Brother. If you don't like who's doing what, bink. Sorry, you lost your benefits. Ooh, how plausible is this? How plausible is this? If you were going to revamp the world and make it a one world currency, are you going to go through the problem of minting and printing and providing dollars for everyone? Please. Got your credit card? We'll download something for you. Wipe out all debt and issue everybody 100,000 Bitcoins or the Vatican's or the Jesuit equivalent. How's that? The Jesuit equivalent. And then claim that we have this backed by 5 trillion tons of gold. I'm sorry, let me restate that, not 5 trillion. From what I understand, there is somewhere well in excess of 250,000 metric tons of gold. 150,000 metric tons, or no, it's 175,000 metric tons is supposed to be sitting in Hawaii, in the Bank of Hawaii, according to Karen Udis. She says it's waiting for a signatory to be released. Interesting. I'd like to know who has control of it. She actually told me who the signatory was, a German gentleman. But who actually owns the gold, I don't know. So that information's out there. Go listen to one of her interviews where she talks about it. Karen Udis, whistleblower for the World Bank, or about the World Bank, I guess. The question is, now she's attacking the Zionists the Jesuits in this, very quiet about the Zionist banking system. But boy, she doesn't like the Jesuits one bit. So take it for what it's worth. But we know that this is where we are. We can see it in the world. Go look at the people who control what is going on in the monetary system today. Go look at what the Pope said. If the Pope is controlling the largest Jesuit or the largest order of Jesuits, they're all in unison now, and the Jesuits are controlling the banking system, or at least half the banking system, I think they might have just a modicum of influence on what happens. And so now you have the rise of chapter 17 in Revelation, chapter 17 and 18, where it talks about this great harlot who sits on seven hills and controls the kings of the earth. A rise to power. When you read chapter 18, it says, and this can actually interestingly be Syriamus herself, who is the church's is the satanic seed of, if you want to call it that, or the serpent's seed of. You want to trace the serpent's seed? It goes right back to Samaria. Every religion on the face of the planet can be tracked back to the ancient Sumerians and the start of civilization. That's where it starts, right with the Anunnaki. They gave us government and religion. That's what the records show. That's what the cuneiform writings translate as. So I'm not going to argue with that. Let's take it as true because it fits. We got two different groups of people. People who are very awake and people who want to kill us. Right, Alfred? How many people who have been whistleblowers in the past 10 years have mysteriously died, including Mr. Stanley Fulham?
Oh, just today, the woman who certified the Obama birth certificate in Hawaii died in a plane crash.
Yep, I had read that.
The only person who died in that plane crash. Now, that's a hit.
How many other people went down? None. She was the only one that died in the crash. Sorry.
8 out of 9.
Yeah, so, to take a look at what's going on. We can prove this. So now let's look at what things that we can prove in the timing. And the first place that we can go from after this whole little PSYOPs event that's going on now with Nelson Mandela, we can go fast forward to 4/14/14. April 14th, 2014, which for the first time in the Gregorian calendar's history synchronizes with the Hebrew month of Nisan, the day 14, which just happens to be Passover. Passover starts at sundown on April 14th, and it ends on sundown April 15th. April 15th provides us with the first of 4 full lunar eclipses, 4 blood moons, all on Hebrew holidays over the next 18 months. Interestingly enough, there's also 4 solar eclipses happening within this time period too, on Hebrew holidays. Now, Passover is always on the full moon. Now, let's just say you were a Hebrew during the time of Christ, and you were celebrating the Passover, and all of a sudden, your big bright moon, all of a sudden became occulted, clouded over, darkened. I'm sure that might put a little fear into you, but you'd get over it. The next year, you'd be back to normal. Except that now, Passover of 2014, Passover of 2015 are both eclipsed by full blood moons. And also in the fall of the year, you have Rosh Hashanah, I believe, is one holiday. The Festival of Booths or Tabernacles is the other holiday. That's the last one, which is occulted in 2015. That occurs on September 28th. Take a guess what historically September 29th is, Alfred. I'll give you a hint. It happened in 2 BC. The historic date of Jesus' birth is February 29th. Actually, they put it from between the 29th and October 1st, 2 BC.
Okay.
So the occulting ends the day before the historic birth of the Messiah or the Christ occurs. Significant or not, you have to wonder, because now when you look at the years, we're going into the 49th and the 50th year on the Hebrew calendar, which is the 49th year was the year where the nation of Israel was not supposed to work. It was a Sabbath year. And on the 50th year, all debt was forgiven. All slaves were released to go back to their families. The clock was reset on the 50th year. We're approaching that same time frame now. Now, if we're going to see a change in the monetary system, based on what the economists are saying and based on all the alerts going up, especially with BRICS issuing their own currency and bringing on additional countries, the dollar is doomed. End of story. Just a matter of time. Uncle Sam is basically kicking the last few little kicks before it goes out. Well, not Uncle Sam, but the Federal Reserve, which is really a good thing, we think. because the Federal Reserve has enslaved us to close to $20 trillion now. So get rid of all the central banks. The Jesuit situation might just do that. We'll have to wait and see. But here's something interesting. All of these Hebrew holidays being eclipsed, and then you also have 4 solar eclipses, 2 partial, 2 full, again on Hebrew holidays. What are the chances? I've never seen it before. I can't find any place where it's happened before. There doesn't seem to be any other applicable place in recorded history. Now, hey, maybe I just didn't uncover the right rock. Maybe on some hieroglyph somewhere in the middle of the desert, it's chiseled in there that this all happened before. I don't know, but it's going to happen next year.
And what's the significance of all of these convergences?
Well, when you look at the prophecies and you look at these different convergences, you start to see the timing of celestial events happening along with situations here on Earth. We have a timing of a celestial event which was set up by the Mayans, which was rebuilt essentially in South Africa, which they just held a week-long, or they're still holding a week-long memorial to before the end and the official date of the alignment, where they want to raise whatever god they think that they're going to raise. The belief is it was built to raise the Egyptian god. So could they want to raise Ra or Osiris?
Because you're saying that the Voortrekker Monument is in South Africa?
Yeah.
I see. So that the false flag of the Mandela funeral was really built around the Voortrekker Monument. That's what you're saying.
Well, it was built around the Voortrekker Monument was put into place.
Yeah.
It was built in this one location in South Africa as a memorial to the Dutch that had moved there and tried to settle the area.
Yeah.
And so it was placed right on this one particular place, holy ground, higher. It's on a hill.
Yeah.
It sits, the location, I'm not sure exactly how they chose that location, but man, you get some lightning strikes there, don't they? So it's an energy center, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And they built this right smack in the middle of it with an alignment with the sun that comes down and lights up their altar on the 16th.
Right. So
now we know that come you're going to have on Passover 2014, you have a very significant date. It starts actually, it's also the date of Jesus' death in 33. Jesus died, he was the Passover lamb. So you have essentially the death of Christ and the Passover being celebrated simultaneously, ending with a full blood moon. You go back and you look at the scriptures. Okay, maybe it's got a little bit different meaning, but there are 6 scriptures, prophecies, which all talk about the moon being turned to blood and the sun not giving its light. When you look over the next 18 months from 4/14/14, the moon is turned to blood 4 times, and 4 times the sun does not give its light.
Right. So what you're saying, and it really is that you've deconstructed the false flag Illuminati ceremony that's being carried out in South Africa right now around the psyops of the Mandela funeral.
Yeah,
and showing that it really relates to the Mayan calendar, to certain celestial and astronomical and astrological events, and that it's setting up a whole series of convergences for 2014. Now, you've noted 4/14/14, March 14th, 2014, 4/14/14. What do you see as occurring then?
Actually, April 14th.
Oh, yeah, sorry. April,
That's okay.
April 14th.
Yeah, when I came up with that date, I also came up with the date of 3/13/13. This happened in October of 2010. I got irritated with somebody's post, and I just said, well, look, It was right around the 10-10-10 events, the awakening. And I said, what we need to do is be careful of 3-13-13 and 4-14-14, not even having the slightest clue on why I said it. It just like popped into my mind and I said it. Well, I could never figure out what happens on 3-13-13 until 3-13-13 came about and we got ourselves the first Jesuit Pope ever.
Right.
Okay, so now there are corresponding prophecies within the Bible, with the book of Isaiah, that line up with, interestingly enough, it's in the 4th chapter, a siege of Babylon. The Babylon siege of Jerusalem. So symbolically, what we would have going on here, it's a 390-day prophecy. So what we saw over the last year is the rise of this Jesuit Pope and his condemnation of the currency system, the worldwide currency system. And he's come out and he said, we have to take care of the poor of the world. We have to be benevolent. We have to be loving toward these people. Interesting to see how the shift all of a sudden, we got to take care of the people as before, pass the plate. Now, we're looking at a paradigm in banking, which is also changing. We're seeing a paradigm of all these world leaders showing up at South Africa all at the same time, which is a BRICS country. No doubt they were being told, prepare for what is going to become. We're going to turn around and change this over, start the change. So we can expect to see over the next year, we can expect to see the fall of the dollar and some replacement of the dollar on a worldwide basis, which will put the Vatican in control. That's all well and good, except for one thing. The Zionist banking cabal is not going to be happy. Okay? And that brings in a whole different dynamic to this, because now you have, let's go back to the Knights Templar for a minute. Remember why they were outlawed? Because they were making hexagrams and pentagrams, and they were worshiping Baphomet, and they were spitting on the cross, and they were urinating on the cross, and all these different situations. Well, the 6-sided star is the representation of Nimrod. The 5-sided star is the representation of Tammuz. Tammuz was said to be Nimrod incarnate. Of course, only Syriamus, his mother, knew for sure who the father was. But there is the start of the reptilian line, the seed of the serpent, right in with the most high echelon of the Sumerian Empire. It gets passed down to the Egyptians. The Egyptians pass it down to the Hebrews. The Hebrews take it to Rome. And from Rome, it's brought to England and is now controlling us via the Queen and the throne of England. She controls 25% of the world's population, basically. Certainly, I think it's 23% of the land mass of Earth is controlled by the Queen. And pretty much the rest of it is controlled by the Vatican. And the Vatican controls the Queen. So it all comes right back to the same Jesuit banking system versus the Zionist banking system. They both rode the same horse once upon a time. They may not be riding it anymore. I don't believe that the Rothschild and the Rockefeller banking cabal, Bush banking cabal, those who are in charge of the Federal Reserve are ready to eat a $17 trillion loss. And that's what they're facing with the collapse of the Federal Reserve note. So you can see how this is going to stir up problems. So now you go back to, there's one prophecy that we have to look at here. It's very significant. It's only really mentioned in one place. Everything is doom and gloom except for this one prophecy. It says, when the nations declare peace and security. Whoa, 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 let's stop right there. The nations are going to declare peace and security? How is that possible? Well, it's possible if they pull off this banking coup. Turn around, forgive all debt, issue everybody in the world an electronic currency that they can use. Print it up once. There you go. Maybe it'll be a wrist chip in the wrist. There you go. You're all good to go now.
666, right? And if you don't pledge allegiance, if you don't pledge allegiance to the beast, You don't get connected to the currency. So that
How
means
about that?
so that means we're outside the currency. That means that we have to get into our local off the grid currencies.
There
Right?
you go, Alfred. You see
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you see how it's coming together?
Yeah, yeah.
That now that control factor should be in place probably by the end of 2014, beginning of 2015.
Now, just by the way, as you know, as you well know, Woodrow Wilson, the bought politician of the Rothschilds,
Boy,
took
ain't that the truth?
took the Federal Reserve Act to Congress over the Christmas holidays of 1913. And
Where are we
so,
here? Let's see. 100 years
yeah,
later,
yeah,
Alfred?
yeah. And so on December 23rd, 2013, which is uh, about 10 days away from right now, the charter runs out. So what's going to happen?
Well, from what I understand, they've already renewed the charter. They
Oh,
did
I
that
see.
last May, if I recall
Oh,
correctly.
oh, okay.
So the Congress has already ratified it. But what's the difference whether you ratify it or not? If the paper ain't worth anything
Yeah,
more than
yeah.
to use in your outhouse,
Yeah, yeah, because it's tied to the petrodollar.
yeah. And so
Now,
you have
now, but this is really going to hit Americans hard because, and just listen to
we own
this.
petrodollars.
Yeah, yeah. Listen to this analysis. What has happened is that the owners of all the industrial base of America have shipped it overseas. Look at Detroit, right? Detroit is
Yep.
collapsing because its industrial base was shipped overseas to China. And so America has been buying, and so the rest of the world produces what the rest of the world and America want. All the gadgets. This is an iPhone. Sorry, folks. They say designed in California but produced in China. Okay. And so, so this has been bought only because there's been a petrodollar which has been enforced, and that is that all oil, and we have petroleum-based world energy system, is bought and sold in oil, in U.S. dollars. But once you can buy and sell oil with another currency, then, and you shift to another currency, then in order for Americans to buy any goods like an iPhone, they have to pay China for it in gold first, in a gold-backed currency. Okay? So, which is what the rest of the world has to do.
Pretty much.
So,
Yeah.
so
They want value, not
so
paper.
all of a sudden, America's going to be thrown back on its inner values, okay? Because it won't have its toys. Then what? Then what?
You know, that's going to be a real big problem.
Yeah.
And all I can say is that I'm glad that I grew up in more rural areas in my life. I experienced culture shock when I was in my teenage years. My parents decided to move to Southern Appalachia and took me out of a prep school. I can never understand the whole thing with that. Well, I understood it later, but I learned a lot of outdoor things from the mountain folks when I was down there. I learned how to tie flies, learned how to fly fish. I had learned entomology before I knew what the word, before I actually got a good understanding of what entomology was all about. I was learning it, all aquatic entomology, and tying up imitation flies to go fish with it. We didn't have TV. We got 3 channels. One out of, if you want to call them that, we got a snowstorm out of Asheville. We got a little bit of a picture out of Cleveland, Tennessee, and a little bit of a picture out of Atlanta, and that was it. But it was a different way of life.
Yeah.
I learned to play the guitar. I learned a lot of natural healing. I learned how to survive in the wild if I had to.
Yeah.
I learned how to live without electricity.
Yeah.
I prefer my electricity. I prefer my gadgets. I would rather, I enjoy what I've got now, even though it is humble as it might be. But on the other side of the coin, I don't go nuts buying the latest latest and greatest gadget because it's just better ways for them to track you.
Yeah.
They're hitting you with more control methods. So, we have to readjust our thinking here a little bit. But most people won't, and that's part of the problem because they buy into this psyops lock, stock, and barrel. They how many people around the world are mourning for Nelson Mandela? Not that we shouldn't be sorry that a man died.
Right.
But wait a minute. Look at how many are mourning about it, and look at how many are saying, hey, here's a psyops event going on.
Yeah, which is loading into the collective mind, which is loading into kind of the spiritual balance of light versus darkness. And January, as I understand it from an astrological point of view, is supposed to begin to be very, very heavy as far as potential disruption. And who knows what the false flags coming up now. What sort of false flags do you foresee in 2014 and 2015? Or how do you see this playing out?
Alfred, as far as false flag themselves, we'll probably see more of the shooting things going on.
Yeah.
But I think that we've hit a point now where I don't know if they're going to really need a false flag to take down the American dollar.
Yeah, it's kind of false flag.
Yeah. That's pretty cut and straight. But now what they will need is somebody to come to the rescue.
Yeah.
You see, and so now could you imagine all of a sudden the church says, we'll come to the rescue, we'll finance this whole thing. But first it's got to go flat.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They're not going to pump up, they're not going to give us a new tire until
and now
the one that we have is totally shredded.
The Pope of the poor masses is going to come and bring together the communists and the capitalists and everybody, and they'll say, here's your holy Bitcoin, and it's away,
Well,
boom.
Yeah.
Whether it's Bitcoin or not, because I heard that the analysis is that Bitcoin is a huge Ponzi scheme. But anyway, that's just Bitcoin.
Well, what better than the Vatican to set it up?
Yeah, right. right. By the way, in January, January 2013, Bitcoin was $13. I've got my Bitcoin wallet here, and guess what? It's empty. Because I don't know, man. I can't. I don't know if I'm going to get into that bandwagon.
Alfred, I used to trade commodities. I wouldn't touch Bitcoin with a 10-foot pole. There's no way. Commodities are tough enough. Yeah. Bitcoin, it's like, which way is the wind blowing right now?
Yeah. Right. And so well, let me just say, we have some of our favorite personalities like Prince William and Queen Elizabeth and all these people. How do you see all of this transpiring over the next 2014, 2015?
That's a good question, and it's actually where we need to segue into anyway, because we have, interestingly enough, in 2015, the 33rd birthday of Prince William.
The magic year.
He'll be 33 on June 21st, 2015. Now,
by the way, our program on Prince William, Is He the Antichrist, and the first Zionist world king, is up there in the world rankings. I mean, it has gone viral worldwide.
I wish I had a mill for everyone that saw that. But anyway, the situation we have to look at the numbers, though. Okay. Yeah. Now let's go back. Let's talk about the occulting a little bit. It's the occulting of the Hebrew holidays. Mm-hmm. The Zionists claim to be Hebrew. So if this is going on, if they're occulted, their power is stopped. Okay? Power is covered up.
What does occulted mean?
A cult is hidden. And when we talk about the occult, it's hidden knowledge.
Right.
So what we're seeing is the occulting of the moon and the occulting of the sun. It's being hidden on these historic Hebrew holidays.
So So what you're saying is that the Zionist power is going down? Is that what you're saying?
Symbolically, yes.
Symbolically, yes. Okay.
Symbolically, yes. So now, but what? And what do we see in this occulting? We're seeing the Vatican's popularity rise. Everybody, the Pope is saying things that people want to hear. Hey, I love all the poor people. We're going to give you money. Somebody told me that in South America, it's already started happening where the church is giving poor people money, or that they're telling them that they're
Oh,
planning on
yeah.
giving them
No,
money.
no. Bitcoin is going bananas in South America. Yeah.
What can I tell you, Alfred? What can I tell you?
No,
You know, the scenario, yeah, we laugh because we can see it. It's all lining up. So now let's take a look. As we get to the end of this, Prince William turns 33. So if he becomes the next king of England, not just the king of England, but possibly the king of the earth,
Yeah.
king of the world,
Yeah.
here's what happens. You see, the Vatican, in the prophecy, the Vatican says, or the great harlot who is riding this scarlet-colored wild beast, 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 heads standing for the world powers of the earth. The 10 horns, interestingly enough, there are 10 crowned houses of Europe whose dynasties get handed down from generation to generation. So, and scarlet is a royal color. And no doubt that right through the Knights of Malta, the Vatican, or the Jesuit Vatican, is controlling these royal families of Europe because they're all knights. They're all knights, either through the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the Knights Hospitaller, the Knights of the, I want to say Holy Sacrilege. It's Holy Sepulchre. Anyway, they're all knighthoods, and once you're made a knight, hey, you're in service to the person who, or the organization that made you a knight. And so here, we're coming up to Prince William being 33. So I would imagine that by the time, because the Pope's got to bless this, by the time Prince William steps up to the crown, in very could well be 2015, the world would be declaring peace and security. And just think how the people would feel the son of Diana is taking the crown. My goodness. The next generation, think about it. Think of the psyops around that.
It's PR.
Alfred, come on.
It's, I mean, all you have to do is take the royal wedding and, square it up to the power of 10, and you've got it.
Yeah, pretty much. It would be like the royal wedding, the Queen's Jubilee, and the Summer Olympics, the 2012 Summer Olympics, all rolled into one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I mean, with the Commonwealth alone, he becomes head of state of 23 to 38 nations.
Yeah, and he's already paid a visit to all of those nations, both him and his bride. So, they're in flux. They're getting ready for the next move. The Queen's got to get out. She's damaged goods. Yeah. Kevin and Annette saw to that. Yeah. So when we look at the situation, we have to have somebody who the world would love. And boy, wouldn't the world love to see the face of Diana sitting on the throne? You look at Prince William, and that's pretty much, he looks like his mother. Some people say he looks like the image that was brought off the Shroud of Turin, too. So, who knows? There's a whole nother PSYOPs event there.
Yeah.
But let's move forward. Now, let's look at that as a marker on June 21st, 2015.
June 21st, 2013. That's his birthday? 2015.
2015. He'll be 33. So I would look for something to happen where he would take the throne either just before, during, or slightly after. Now, this brings us to the end of the occulting. It brings us to where the Zionist powers no longer are blocked in a symbolic way, at the very least. And now they can raise some sort of situation. And this is where we start to get into the possible return of Planet X, Nibiru.
Oh.
Yeah, we have to kind of watch this. Now, prophetically speaking, something happens. We are in the segment for Revelation chapter 9 to happen, and it says that a angel that was cast down from a star cast down from the heavens was given the key to the pit of the abyss, and he opens the pit of the abyss. This takes us back to Africa, and he unleashes a plague on the world of what can only be called genetically engineered mutants. And these things go forth as a locust plague, and they sting the men. They are the size of horses. They are built for warfare. They have the face of a man, the hair of a woman, and the teeth of a lion, and the tail of a scorpion, and
It
they have
sounds
wings.
like a job for DARPA. And I'm serious.
Alfred, yes. Yes. Tell me, I wish Andy would turn around and come on and say, yeah, I saw these guys. They're on the moon in bases, or they're underground. There's a whole army of them. We laugh, but here's the crazy part. When you go back to the book of Enoch, the Watchers, before they're hauled off and thrown into Tartarus, into prison, which could be a different dimension. We know it's believed that some of them were actually imprisoned within the earth itself, leading leading credence to what your Cobra had to say. If you look at the book of Enoch, there's every reason to believe someone or some interdimensional is trapped within the continent of Africa. Interesting. Yeah, read the account. So this opening of the key, opening the pit of the abyss, may be part of what was actually going on down there. What is going on down there, and what is partially being invoked. They might have to invoke this a couple more times. Keep your eyes out.
Right.
But certainly, this all comes to this releasing is a stinging of the men. For 5 months, it says they sting the men. And there's a connection between the opening of this pit of the abyss and what is recorded in Revelation, the 6th chapter, again with the skies or the sun being darkened. When you read the account, it says the pit of the abyss was opened, and its smoke came out like a blast furnace, the smoke of a blast furnace, and it darkened the sun, which takes us into these other 6 prophecies, which all start talking about the sun being darkened in one way or another. Now, I would look for that to happen somewhere in the fall of 2015, more than likely. Wow. Now, we may not actually see these creatures the size of horses with tails that sting and wings like they can fly with, but we might actually see some sort of alien invasion or return of alien life forms, something showing up. And at least I would put it, and the reason why I'm putting it in the fall of 2015, it could be before, but the reason why I'm putting it in the fall of 2015 is it's after the occulting. Mm-hmm. It's after the occulting. The Zionists are coming back to power. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the prophecy in Revelation 17 and 18, there's an 8th king which comes to power. And it springs from the 7-headed, 10-horned wild beast. And the 10 horns, which represent 10 earthly kings, support. It says that they are kings without a kingdom. But they join together behind the 8th king, and and this 8th king only rules for a short amount of time. It says only for an hour. Some translations say only for a moment. So picture a government which is only allowed to last for a very short amount of time, and its total focus is on to destroy the harlot, the Vatican, to take the riches and the goods from the Vatican. It says that it attacks the harlot. It strips her. It cleans her bones and burns the remains with fire.
Shoo.
What would change the paradigm on this earth quicker than aliens show up, especially if they didn't like the Catholic Church?
Huh.
What if they came back and said, they came back with some kind of backstory that said all religion is, the United Nations, you may very well know this, they guarantee us freedom of religion,
Yeah.
freedom of choice of religion,
Yeah.
as long as that religion is not a hazard to public safety.
Yeah.
So if you're yelling in downtown Tel Aviv something about Allah and you push a button which blows you up, well, I would say that could possibly be a religion which is a hazard to public safety.
Yeah. Now, but wait. We kind of jumped away from the eighth king a little bit too quickly, a little bit too momentarily.
Yeah, I know that. I know how it works well. But anyway, let's go back and revisit this.
Yeah.
This
So
king,
yeah,
the eighth king and the other 10. The eighth king, as I should actually pull it up. Let me see if I've got this here just for a second. No, I can bring it up in just a second. Hold on, because I want to actually get as close to the word. I don't want to paraphrase this. The eighth king. We'll pick it up in verse 7. This is verse 7 of Revelation 17. It says, "And so the angel said to me," this is John speaking, "why is it you wondered? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the wild beast that is carrying her, and that has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The wild beast that you saw was, but is not, and yet is about to ascend out of the abyss." Interesting, about to ascend out of the abyss. And it is about to go off into destruction. It ascends out of the abyss, reigns for a short amount of time, and then goes off into destruction. I'm going to pick it up in verse 9. It says, "Here is where the intelligence that has wisdom comes in. The 7 heads means 7 mountains where the woman sits on, top. And there are 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is. The other has not yet arrived." Now, while this was going on, the 5 which had fallen was Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. The one that was Rome, and the one which is yet to come is the the Anglo-American dual world power of the United Kingdom and the United States. Hey, the United States is a superpower. You want to fight? Want to argue about it? They'll show you. So there is the 7th king. Now it goes on and it says, okay, verse 11, "And the wild beast that was, but is not, is also itself an 8th king, but it springs from the 7." In other words, one king which rules over these 7 nations, ahead of the United Nations, a one world king, someone who unifies the world, unifies all these other nations under one organization and rules. And that's where this 8th king is coming in. We might consider it to be the New World power or the New World order, the one world government, who has this total support of the kings of the world. Now, here's what it says in verse 12. It says, "And the 10 horns that you saw mean 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but do receive authority as kings 1 hour with the wild beast. These have one thought, and so they give their power and their authority to the wild beast." It says, "These will battle with the Lamb, but because he, the Lord of Lords, King of Kings, the Lamb will conquer them." But there is a mission that these have first. It goes on and it talks about who this woman is who is controlling this wild beast, that where the 8th king springs from. In verse 15, he says, verse 14, it says, we're in 15. "And these say to me, the waters that you saw where the harlot is sitting mean peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns that you saw, that the wild beast, these will hate the harlot, and they will make her devastated and naked, and they will eat up her fleshy parts, and they will completely burn her with fire. For God put it into their hearts to carry out the one thought. Now, it seems interesting when you look at if the Vatican gains control over the world financial system, it would indeed control all the nations around the world. In verse 18, it says, interestingly, it says that the harlot says, I sit as a queen, no widow am I, and no mourning shall I see. Historically speaking, Syriamis, the wife of the first Sumerian king god of the sun, by the way, Nimrod, had him murdered. And she took his place as both the queen of the Sumerian people and their goddess, the goddess of the earth, the moon, and the stars. When she gets pregnant, she gives birth to Tammuz, the five-pointed star, or Baphomet. The story keeps on being handed down through all the world powers, from one religion to another. It's being carried out today, where we see the five-sided star and the crescent moon of Islam, where we see the church with the cross or the phallus of ISIS, and we go to the Zionists, who have put the Star of Molech on their flag. You have to excuse me, I'm getting a little hoarse here.
Oh boy, well,
It's okay.
Yeah, take some water, please.
So you have these religions all fighting each other, and they're all coming under the main religion, which is the Vatican. And so when they're all done away with, all religion is wiped clean. The end of religion. But who does it? It's the nations under the one world order, new world order, however you want to call it.
So is that nations, does that, under the new world order, does that mean like the governments, or does that mean do the people do away with them?
It would seem that it is the governments, according to the prophecy.
Oh, okay. So
yeah. So we're looking at governmental entities.
Yeah.
The people are at the effect.
Yeah. So that the governments then do away with the harlot, right?
Yeah.
But that government only lasts a short while because ... The
last thing which shows up before what is considered to be the War of Armageddon is what could very well be the Nibiru effect, or Planet X. Marshall Masters did some excellent work. I don't think anybody who is not tied into the system of astronomers that are following this, I'm sure somebody knows and can tell us exactly what's coming this way. If you go back, I think it was 2 years ago, 28 or 29 astronomers all died in the same year, or within a 12-month time frame. I was starting to wonder if astronomy was one of the most deadliest professions. Why would they got, I think, 14 or 15 at one time with a cable car crash in France. So why were these people being silenced? What are they looking for? We have the legend of Nibiru. It's supposed to pass once every 3,600 years. 3,600 years ago, we have the synchronicity of the Exodus. And interestingly enough, when we look at the historical account, it was the god Yahweh on one hand and the Egyptian gods on the other that were being challenged. Here we are in the 21st century. We have these different gods, the Mayan gods, the Egyptian gods, the gods of the Greeks and the Romans, all being invoked, all being trying to be brought into power. We have people who are telling us that they're channeling for the aliens, that the aliens are very concerned about what we're doing, whether they're the Council of the Palladians or whether the Galactic Federation of Light or whatever galactic council they're part of. They got to build some backstory. All these people, all these channelers are telling us the same thing. Well, the Earth's in a very difficult spot right now. Yeah. Scripture said it 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.